Hey, here are my thoughts on the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum Ghost Tour. I had a awesome experience. I'll tell you that right off of the gate. Uh, this, normally the tours which I review are walking tours, where you meet them over Airbnb experiences or TripAdvisor. You pay some money to this person, and then you're walking around a town or maybe a graveyard, and they're telling you the histories of the people who live there and stuff like that. This is a building, right? It's a museum, which is a very different experience from the get go. And there's a lot of opportunities for them to increase the horror with that factor, and they 100% certainly did. Uh, this tour is totally worth the money. They pack a ton of content into it, and while we're going to address a lot of ways that the tour could be improved, I think as it stands, it's a great tour and one of the best I've been on, and certainly one that you should consider. And if you haven't seen it and you think you're going to, then don't watch this video because there's going to be spoilers, of course. And the whole haunted house thing has been around forever, right? But it's particularly around Halloween times that we're going to see these sort of experiences pop up, particularly emergent experiences where you're going into a set piece environment, right? As opposed to the walking tours, which are kind of always happening. And so I think this tour is year round, but I particularly went on Halloween, which is, of course, a great time to go. And the other thing to mention there is that there was a lot of guests at that time, right? It was completely booked out. And so that may be a factor to consider because one of the issues, certainly with this tour, was just the level of throughput. And that may have been due to them having a lot of difficulty with just the amount of guests at that particular time. Because when it comes to spooky stuff, there's no busier date than Halloween, of course. So let's start there. My tour group, I went with a group of three other friends. So we were four in total. And we were squeezed into another group who had a party of nine for basically newlyweds. And altogether, that means we made up 13 people, which certainly felt like too many to experience this tour as a group. We found the rooms we were often a little bit stuffy, squeezed together. Oftentimes, not everybody had a great view of what the guide was talking about, and so I think it would make a lot of sense. Easy win is for them to max out the group size to something closer to maybe eight. So maybe 8 or 9, probably not more than 10, because at 13 it felt far too many. I think though that there really wasn't enough groups going in. There was a lot of waiting, right? And I think that they could increase the number of tour guides, which obviously, right, staffing tour guides is always tough, right? But I think if they increase the number of guides, maybe even just particularly around the spooky day, where you're going to need a lot of staff on hand, then what they could do is increase the throughput without decreasing the duration of the experience. Because I think the issue was just not enough guides pushing people through. Now, with that being said, when you start the experience, there's a ton of set piece design immediately off the bat, and it's clear that they put a lot of money and time into designing the set pieces within the tour. Starting from the very beginning, I think there was a lot of kitschy, sort of creepy artifacts and curios that inhabited the tour. I think the line that they say is not everything in this tour is haunted, but it's certainly all odd, and I think that was certainly true, and a lot of fun. I loved the voiceovers from the character Zach Bagan that took place in different rooms to sort of give the tour that sort of a celebrity factor authenticity. Obviously, a lot of people who are coming to this are big fans of Zach Bagan. I hadn't seen any of his shows previously, so I'm not very familiar with him, with the personality. But there was a lot of people on our tour group who were familiar with his shows and could even quote certain episodes. So I think that's great that he was able to engage, his core fan base through those lines. And they're done in a way that I would say is kind of like low quality, like a raspy, creaky voice, but that's going to be a positive because it actually it lends to the sort of kitschy, old school, creepy aesthetic. And I actually really enjoyed that. So I think all the voiceover lines were really well delivered, and Zach did a great job in all those performances. I thought that some of the set pieces, in particular, like they have a Zoltar, which is sort of reskinned with him inside of it, talking and welcome you to the tour with the green glowing eyes. Like that was all incredible and really well done. Not all of the rooms stand together though. There's definitely an imbalance going on there. Some rooms are filled up top to brim, with lots of cool set pieces on the wall, on the ceiling, tucked underneath the cupboards. Other rooms, I think some of the newer ones, were particularly sparse and felt like they were unfinished. Probably the most obvious example would be James Dean had a haunted car chassis, and everything in that room is, well, there's just one thing. It's the haunted car chassis on the wall with some really well chosen wallpaper around it, like custom designed, and that looked pretty. But there was no plaque, no real description. It was a real understatement, the room. And I think that it was just boring. So it'd be great for them to really amp that up. In addition to that, it's clear that this man is a collector. He has a lot of pieces just from famous celebrities that didn't seem to necessarily be haunted at all. It just seemed like, just like movie memorabilia, not even particularly odd, let's say. So, for example, there was just the kryptonite crystals from one of the Superman movies, which was just sort of like, okay, why? I didn't really get anything out of that. So it would be great if they could maybe go into greater depth there. But the other factor is that, this tour is so long and they don't even cover everything, right? So it seems like it would have been nice perhaps if there was a choose your own adventure element to that. Like perhaps we go into this room and, the tour guide basically says at this time, they say, hey, there's 3 things I could talk to you about here, but I'm just going to talk to you about this thing. I would have preferred if they had said, hey, there's 3 things I could talk to you about here, this, or that. Which would you prefer? And you could have a sort of choose your own adventure dialogue there, which I think could be really rewarding and maybe encourage people to come more than once. So I think that would be great, and it would be a great opportunity to improve the tour. Yeah, and then with respect to the stuff where it's like understated, like there's nothing in the James Dean chassis room, I have full confidence in the team to bring that to the quality bar of the other rooms. I think it just needs time and attention. Uh, it felt very unbalanced, the tour, in the sense of like you have this one room with just one object in it, the car chassis, reportedly purchased for over $400,000, right? $500,000 for one curio in this museum. And then at the start of the tour, there's no bathroom, right? You have to go outside to a little porta potty, which every other guest has used, and it's so full of shit and toilet paper that you could not fit in. You wouldn't even get to your elbow if you just put your hand in there. It was just a giant pile of refuse in this porta potty, right? It clearly needed to be refreshed or something, or maybe, I don't know, buy a goddamn bathroom with the $500,000 you spent on some piece of car, right? It felt very much like unbalanced, like, oh, this is high quality, like curios, but a very low quality presentation, very low quality, no bathroom accommodation, right? So it's like really high class and very shitty. So I feel like it would be great for them to reconcile that by, and I've seen them by the boardwalk here, right? They've got these trailers you can rent where, it comes with these nice bathrooms, and it's like 4 bathrooms for this one trailer. And you just, rent that, and what's that going to be? Like, I don't know, $20K a day. Like, it's not, there's no way that would not make sense as a purchase for this guy. So I felt like that is another area where it just didn't make sense. On top of that, there's no seating during the tour, right? This tour goes for over, I'm not sure, maybe 2 hours about, and there was no seating during the tour, not a bench or in sight, and that was very frustrating because my tour group, during the boring periods, we would just sit on the floor. We sat on the floor several times during the tour because people were really tired, and we're fairly athletic, people. So I think somebody who's obese is just not going to hack it. And I think it would be great hey, it's a physical tour. So it would be great if they could just have some benches and stuff like that during the tour. Particularly, they sell the ones where you could just drill it into the wall and it could flip down when you need to sit on it. And then maybe when you're walking through the door and transitioning through the space, you could flip it up and now it's just part of the wall. Like, I would really appreciate that attention to detail. It just felt like an oversight. And no water either, right? And this is among a tour where it's purported that a ton of people are passing out and stuff. Well, Zach, maybe it's not because your tour is haunted. Maybe it's because these people haven't sit down for 2 hours, and it's the middle of the desert, and you're not giving them any water. You know what I mean? So I think that was just a little. I felt uncared for in that respect. I didn't feel I didn't feel like they were really providing the right amenities to me in that time. It ends in a gift shop. We were in a bit of a rush, so we had to run out. But I think that's a sign of a great tour, right? So I think that was well done, and I think there was also these sort of like optional um, points in the tour where you can engage if you're a VIP guest, which is an extra $30, the price of a T-shirt, they say. And I think that was actually very well monetized, and a great job was done there. So I think that was actually well done. My friends thought, oh, okay, this is a little bit silly to pay the extra money. But, the guides say that's about the price of a t-shirt, and you get the t-shirt anyway, right? Why does the t-shirt cost $30, right? But I think it's a great deal, and I think it's really well marketed. So I think that was a great idea. What else comes to mind? Da, 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 da. There's another version of the tour where you can come at night and you get some flashlights and you can go on a self-guided experience. I thought that sounded awesome. So I'm not too sure on the pricing on that, but what I do know is very limited availability, particularly around spooky season. So we weren't able to do that, but I think I would have very much enjoyed it. And it's consistent with a number of other tours I've been on that have a sort of overnight experience. I went to this haunted prison where it was the same thing. You could come after dusk and stay the night at the haunted prison, and go around and flashlight tour. And I think that's awesome. I think that's a really fun idea. So I think that's also a lot of fun. And there's a bunch of videos with there's this one video with Post Malone that I thought was really fun, where he engages with the Divic Box, and they have an encounter, which I thought was very cool. My friends, of course, memeing how many times he says "my friend Post Malone," like he's flexing on that. But I thought it was a very good experience nonetheless. Um, we have to say that the Dybbuk box was a much higher production than pretty much any of the other stuff inside the museum. They did a really great job of setting it up with the salt and the sage around it to look very spooky and official, and I think they did an amazing job with that. Um, Not all the stuff in the tour. So let me say that there's different kinds of horror, right? There's a jump scare, then there's that may give you a little fright in the moment. Then there's a existential horror of something that might follow you home, you know? And I think they do a good job of having both. They have some jump scares with some live actors that I thought were all very well done. They have a receding false wall that sort of falls away just as you're looking at it, and I think they did a great job with that. Our tour guide really played it up. And then the other thing that they did was, and they have the live actor too, so that's all fun, like a scary clown and stuff. Um, the existential horror stuff, I feel like they could have delivered a little bit more on that in some areas. So particularly with, they have this haunted mask, and they have this haunted doll that you basically walk around and you say hi to the doll and you say bye to the doll, and it's very fast. It's a little bit too fast, I think. It would have been great if that would have been a room where you walk in and the tour guide is talking while they are discussing the item. They did a really good job with the devil chair showcase piece. So with the devil chair, you walk into a room, they're talking about the room, and then suddenly you have that moment where the set piece has begun, the wall opens up, and boom, there's the chair rocking, right? They did a fantastic job in the delivery of that. The scary mask and the doll, the delivery was not as strong because they just have the doll there, and you're walking by very fast, and you're sort of at the speed of a brisk walk. You just look to the side, you see the doll, and you look away, and it's done. And it wasn't a horrifying image in itself, right? To give you that, because it's not a jump scare, right? It's just like, here's this thing that looks spooky and that has this sort of otherworldly paranormal ambiance to it, but that sort of ambiance doesn't sink in if you're only going to see it so quickly, right? So I really would have preferred if those curios would have received the same lavish set piece design that the devil's chair did, because I feel like they weren't well utilized. The Divic box, being an exception, where we had a lot of time because with the doll, you sort of walk around and there's only one angle that you could see it. With the Divic Box, you're walking around and you could see it from all the angles. So you're spending a lot of time in that room, and I think that was well done. Additionally, the Divic Box has an antechamber, which can sort of build up the suspense a little, and I think that's always a great decision because a lot of times we're not going to know what the hell we're looking at until you tell us, and then we'll get scared, right? So it's way better for you to tell us beforehand, this is going to be scary, and then from the very onset of seeing the piece, I'm in fear, you know. Well done nonetheless. It was great. Um, there was one performance that no one in my tour group was really interested in, which is that they had a carnival show where this sort of stage performer person put a some creepy hooks in his eyeballs and also put a drill up his nose. And so this is just raw body horror that I'm sure we're all familiar with, but it just felt out of place with the general tour and would probably be the low point experience for all of us. We were just sort of like, it's gross, but it's not really horrifying. It's not really a great. It wasn't really a good piece, like in the greater conversation of the other works that this guy has in his collection. So I would say I didn't really enjoy that, and it could probably go. But with that being said, body horror is an excess of horror. So it's certainly something that some might resonate with some people, but I think there's already a lot of great elements with that in terms of like, oh, this is literal skin leather from a person and stuff like that. So I think they're already delivering on that front. So maybe that space could be better utilized. Um, I'm not sure. I think that whole space probably could have been a great set piece for Peggy, the scary doll. So maybe if they move that around, it could be possible. I'm not sure, but that's what I would prefer. Um, so yeah, I think that wraps up my thoughts on the tour. Overall, it was a tremendous tour. It's clear everybody working there really enjoyed the spooky stuff, and this guy has done a great job of selecting some really great personnel and some really great curios and art pieces. It's a great tour and one of the best that I've seen certainly, and totally worth the visit if you're a fan of spooky stuff and heading to the Las Vegas location. Thanks.